All right, this is the 425. Welcome back, everybody, for podcast number 2. Going to be covering the national landscape today. We got Jeremy Miller here. Jeremy, what's your Twitter handle, man?
Coach Miller 06.
And you can find me on Twitter at Coach Torres _. So we're going to start in the SEC today. We've had a couple games of note down there. We got a ranked matchup between Ole Miss and Kentucky. We're going to talk some Will Levis, a couple injuries in the Bama-Arkansas game. Jeremy, where do you want to start today?
We can start with Georgia facing a little bit of adversity. I think that's what caught the attention of most people Saturday night was, oh, wow. Everyone kind of thought Georgia would pull away early. That was not the case. They were down big late or down big. And then they had to scrape and claw to find their way back in. Just a bunch of undisciplined play defensively. They didn't look very inspired. And the talk going into this was that every broadcast you hear, it's like the broadcaster says, well, this Georgia coaching staff believes they're better this year than they were last year. And that's just – and the last couple of weeks, we've seen a couple chinks in the armor. Kent State has picked up on some things defensively, tendency-wise, I think. And they were able to exploit some things. And then Missouri, just Saturday night in Mizzou, just come out and played
on paper,
inspired
that's
football.
Whitewash, man. That's a 2-2 team versus the defending national champs who I guess you can't say they're rolling after struggling with Kent State last week and now struggling with Mizzou. They were down 16-6 at the half, come back to win the game. But like you said, some uninspired defensive play, just some uncharacteristic things. They haven't played this way the whole year, but it's some little shades maybe of like 2014 Florida State where they're coming out struggling because they just know they're better than everybody and they keep winning. But it's not. They're really not the number one team in the country. I saw Joel Klatt put out his top 10. He dropped Georgia to 5. He's like, they just can't say number one after struggling with Kent State and Missouri like that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are like, it's tough to get wins on the road in the SEC, and it's like Mizzou lost to Kansas State 40-16. Like, come on, man! Like,
this is not. It's not your 5-4 like South Carolina team that might jump up and pull an upset on you. It's like, well, you're not totally wrong, but in this instance, it doesn't really apply.
Yeah.
And then we got Bama. Arkansas, Bryce Young went down with an injury in that one and was replaced by what Twitter was calling a Terminator. Bama's backup quarterback would obviously look like that. They end up
Jaden Melrose out of Katy, Texas. He got a couple state championships to his name and was a well-touted prospect coming out of high school. Like it wasn't like he was some slouch that came in the game, and he gave them a little bit.
Isn't no 3-star coming off the bench,
and he gives the offense a little dimension that Bryce Young is a mobile quarterback, but he's more of a pocket passer, but he's not the type of runner that Melrose is. Who if you let him loose, he's gonna go.
Yeah, he pulled away on that one long touchdown run he had, which he looked like a tailback. He's built sort of like Jalen Hurts, but a lot quicker, a lot faster, more explosive.
And bigger too. Like he's taller and he's not as thick as Jalen yet, but
no. But I have not seen any other news coming out on the Bryce Young injury. I don't know. Have you seen?
No, I think they'll keep that quiet. They don't want to tip their hand too early on giving Aggies whatever they need to prepare for going into next week's night game. That game's going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern, I believe, or 8 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be 7 p.m. Central on Saturday.
In Tuscaloosa?
Yep. Yeah. This year's in Tuscaloosa. And it's it's an area where you don't want to sprain at, and for it to be on the throwing shoulder is a little bit iffy. I know people. It gives the NFL scouts that are going to knock him on his size a little bit more ammo when they want to put people like Will Levis over him, or Nick Leary, or
Yeah.
any of the quarterbacks that they want to put over him because of his size.
Yeah, I'm reading
It gives
last
them
night.
a little bit more of ammo at that point, but I don't
ESPN
buy
reporting it's an
into it.
AC strain or an AC joint in his shoulder. That's something, the Drew Brees tweet a couple weeks ago, like just rub some dirt on it, or what do you say, inject it and get back out there. Like,
Yeah.
those have a varying degree. That can be something that they can play through, or that can be something that sidelines a guy for a while. It's something that gets re-aggravated pretty easily, I think. So definitely have to watch him. But again, he's not exactly a designed runner. And then let's it's funny, the sentiment I've seen from too many people on Twitter yesterday was, all summer it's like, oh man, October 8th, like it's going to be Jimbo and Saban, and now, college game days in Lawrence, Kansas for Kansas TCU and the Aggies. Jeremy, if I dare say so, they are who we thought they were. When I say we, I mean me and you. They're not. They ain't gonna do it this year. Maybe in the future, I don't know. Jimbo's got the same record as the Swag Copter. #Swag wins championships. Kevin Sumlin. It ain't looking too good, Ags. I'm sorry, but it ain't.
Yeah, we didn't. I didn't. You and me really never bought into like why they were ranked as high as they were preseason, given the amount of defensive players that they lost. I know that they have some good defensive players coming back, but we just didn't see it offensively.
Nope.
We hadn't seen enough from Haynes King, and when Max Johnson was LSU, he didn't do anything to make me inspired that he would be a competent starting quarterback. And
listen, you don't need Kyler Murray. You don't need that 5-star to win. As you can look at those Nick Saban Bama teams with, Jake Coker leading them to the title. But you kind of have to be Nick Saban to build the rest of that team out.
Yeah, I mean,
Jimbo's not doing that.
And they've recruited well, but if your offense isn't going to score points, like it doesn't matter how good your defense is, they can't pitch shutouts every week.
They've got the players, but they don't have the structure, and they sure as shit don't have the culture.
Yeah, and I mean their offensive line has not played well this year, and I mean their schedule just didn't set up for it. That's why them being ranked in the top 10 never made any sense to me. Just how tough their schedule is. It's not going to get any easier. They've got Bama. They've got LSU, who continues to improve on a week-to-week basis. I know everyone left Brian Kelly out to dead, but they seem to be figuring some things out over there.
Yep.
Ole Miss is going to be coming in, and Kiffin and Fisher got that rivalry, so that Kiffin's going to want to put some points up.
Yeah.
And that's on top of they have Florida. Florida's not going to roll over for them either. It's just a tough schedule, man. I don't know. They've got South Carolina and UMass, so they're two like, okay, I can give them wins, but the rest of their schedule, it's a bit up in the air.
I agree. We'll get into Kentucky and Will Levis a little bit later on here. Bouncing around, we had a top 10 game in the ACC between Clemson and North Carolina State. A battle between two quarterbacks who are trying to work their way up into the top 5 of our draft boards going into next season. DJ Ueagole had another great game. It looks like he's finally coming into his own, man. He's got some touch. He's got some accuracy. He's feeling the game. He's moving a little bit better.
Yeah, man. It's 2 weeks in a row. 2 weeks in a row. He's showing patience and not and kind of taking what the defense has given him and not forcing anything. And like you said, I've been really impressed the last 2 weeks with his pocket presence and just moving around, because as I touched on a little bit last week, that just hasn't been there like since I've watched him play, since he took steps. And
the new
last year
has not been there. Now it's starting.
Yeah, and last year, I mean, you could argue that he got hit so much in the first few games that he couldn't trust his protection. But at the beginning of this year, it looked like it was kind of the same old thing. And he's, to his credit, He's really turned it around. That defense, without Breesy and without a couple other starters on that defensive unit, they came out firing, and they have everything they could for NC State to handle. And listen, Clemson's got a couple more tough games on their schedule. I know that they've got Notre Dame, which doesn't look as tough as it did week one. And I know that they have a couple more ACC teams. That North Carolina team's got them at home, I believe, and that's going to be hard. But Wake Forest and NC State, you could argue, were their two toughest games on their schedule, and they passed those two with flying colors in the last 2 weeks. But it looks like they're the runaway favorites for the ACC at this point, with the other few teams kind of battling for number two.
We have Clemson, Florida State on October 15th.
Yeah, and that's another Florida State. If you want to talk about a team in the ACC that impressed me in a loss, that Florida State team is going to battle you every week. They're not the Florida State of the past couple of years and Jimbo's failure where he ran and took the money from Texas A&M. Norvell's got them playing hard on a down-to-down basis, and with Jared Verse on defense, it can cause a whole lot of problems for you if you don't have an answer for him.
Yeah, and then they have when you got a leader like Jordan Travis who's been through everything there.
Yeah.
He's not a first-round quarterback, but he's probably a guy that you're going to want to line up and play next to.
Yeah.
So yeah, not to sleep on Clemson's schedule. I mean, they got Florida State on the 15th. The weekend after that, they have 22nd ranked Syracuse, who's 5-0 behind running back Sean Tucker, who's somebody we'll be talking about in the draft process and as the year goes on. So the ACC
looks a lot better than I know they were the laughing stock of the conferences this summer with nobody taking them seriously, but they look like they got some very competitive teams out there.
And 5 ranked teams heading into the last weekend. I mean, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and for another conference, if we want to change lanes a little bit, for another conference that's playing above their standard, the Pac-12 looks like it's got 4 legit teams, and UCLA could possibly be a 5th with the way they're playing right now with their big upset on Friday night.
Yeah. Let's save Big Ten talk for when we do the Michigan pod later. That way we can talk some smack in there. But with the Pac-12, I mean, UCLA came out and mollywopped Washington. And that's not something a lot of people saw coming. Dorian Thompson-Robinson was spectacular. Zach Charbonnet is proving to be pretty much what we always thought he would be and hoped he would be when he was a Michigan recruit and then Michigan player for a couple of years.
That was a little funny seeing some of Michigan Twitter like, oh, you shouldn't let Charbonnet go. And it's like, man.
It's laughable, man. Come on.
It's like the running back room was loaded. Like one of them was bound to transfer. There's not enough carries to go around. Yeah, I think somebody put it best. It was like he would have been RB3 last year, and he would have been at best RB2 this year. So, I mean, that's – yeah.
Yeah, and it's worked out well for everybody. I mean, look at are you not satisfied with the running back room? Like, Hassan Haskins set the school record for rushing touchdowns last year. Blake Corum almost rushed for 1,000 yards as the backup. This year, Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards are arguably the most talented duo in the country. But Zach Charbonnet shows up on SportsCenter a couple times, so we want to cry about it and throw a fit. We'll get into that later.
Yeah. We'll get into that later. But, I mean, everyone wants to peg USC as the favorite, and their offense is legit. I'm not going to knock it. But Alex Grinch doesn't really have that defense humming where it needs to be right now. They've got some talent there. Damani Jackson is growing and becoming a better player as a true freshman. If there's going to be some defensive slugfest, they got Utah coming up pretty soon, and they got Oregon. they miss out on Oregon. They wouldn't see Oregon until the conference championship game, but Oregon and Utah can play some defense, and USC's got Utah and UCLA on their schedule left as well. So I'm not. It's going to be. They're going to take a loss in one of those games. I have a feeling.
Yeah, I don't see. Nobody ever runs the table in the Pac-12. It's Pac-12 after dark. Like they'll lose to Arizona, Arizona State, or some. If they're not going to lose to one of these teams that can step up and play big boy ball with them, then they're going to lose to somebody that they got no business losing to.
Yeah,
that's just the way the Pac-12 goes. I haven't watched them specifically enough to sit here and tell you that's going to happen, but that's generally just how the Pac-12 plays out. So
yeah.
And then we'll jump down to the Big 12 and talk about your region for a little bit. We had Okie State and Baylor played a tight one, and then obviously Kansas State wins on the missed game attempt in tying field goal. I said that in the worst way possible. But they knocked off Iowa State to improve to 5-0. You got TCU, who's 4-0. Big 12's got a bunch of good football teams right now.
Yeah, it's home field advantage never meant more than it did this year in the Big 12 because I honestly, this conference is going to eat itself alive. And even Steve Sarkisian made a note in his post-game press conference yesterday how nobody's going to go in unscathed in the Big 12. And it's the truth because every team in this conference can score and every team can get convenient stops at the right time on any given Saturday, especially when they're at home. So, I really think there's potentially a 3 or 4 loss team that could win the Big 12 conference this year.
Yeah, and they probably won't really be a 3 or 4 loss team, but like you said, that league's just going to cannibalize itself. You got the Red River Shootout coming up next week with Texas and Oklahoma. Oklahoma's reeling. Dalen Gabriel getting knocked out cold on a dirty play. They got absolutely smacked over the weekend, and Texas coming off a big win over UTSA. No, that was
West Virginia.
West Virginia. Yeah, sorry. So, that one's always one to watch. The last couple of years, it's been absolutely bonkers. It's been just nuts the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, it's been as close as you can imagine, and hopefully that's not the Oklahoma team we're going to see on this upcoming Saturday. They're going to play up to their competition. I think it's going to probably be a close game. But even then, if Texas wins that game, their following game is at home against Iowa State, and they could really build some momentum heading into an away game at Okie State on October 28th.
Yep. And then it looks, from here, it looks like you have Oklahoma State, maybe Baylor, Kansas is knocking on that door right there. K-State's right behind them.
And TCU.
It's pretty much everyone is right in the middle right there.
Yeah. And Oklahoma, this is like as must win as it gets if they want to do anything this year, because going 0-3 in the conference is just not a great way to start. Even with as much parity as we expect, you're cutting your margins if you start 0-3 in this conference.
Yeah, absolutely. That's in any given year. And, with the layout where they have where everybody plays everybody and you just take the top 2 teams, who can survive? It's just a 10-man survivor pool pretty much. All right. Yeah. Like we said, we'll cover the Big Ten in the Michigan pod here later on, but a couple scouting things you want to get into. You have some questions on your QB3, and then there was something schematically that you wanted to bring up as well.
Yeah, as far as scouting wise, I know last week I said Will Levis was quarterback 3, and he still is at the moment, but there's just some things that I don't really like regarding it just misses too many easy throws. The accuracy isn't where I would want it to be on intermediate and short routes. It just leaves something to be desired. And I never say never when it comes to fixing accuracy issues. I used to say that before Josh Allen, but given him his drastic change and upgrade in his accuracy, I guess it is a teaching thing when you touch up on some mechanical issues, which he certainly did. And Will Levis may be able to do that too. But for right now, with him not hitting the throws, he just played the back-to-back two tough defenses back-to-back and didn't play all that great. And he had two chances to win the game on Saturday and fumbled both times. And some of that's not his fault. So he needs better blocking, but at the same time, you want to see him make better. You want to see him make plays in that spot to try to win that game, and he just came up short twice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think he's one of those guys that is more of a traits thing. It's not like he's not going to step in day one and you're not going to have anything to worry about. That's not him. It's just that he has the arm, he has the talent, he has these splash plays. So when he has a game like he did last Saturday where you can pin some things on him like that, it's definitely going to ding him. That's going to come back on the scouting report. That's not going to be something that's going to elevate you over a guy like a CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. So, I mean, who's knocking on his door right now for QB3?
It really is up for grabs. I mean, some could argue after the last few weeks that DJU, given his 5-star status and his traits, measurabilities, that people can fall in love with his traits just as much as they can Levy's. He's knocking on that door. We have to see some of these other quarterbacks go through. But I mean, you've got the kid you got Jordan. Is it Jordan Hall at BYU?
Yep. Jaron
Hall. Yeah. Jaron Hall. He might be in that conversation. You kind of have to see how this next month plays out and watch how these quarterbacks play in these bigger games to see if you can see the things that you want to see. There's a lot of talented quarterbacks, as we touched on last week, that were in conversation for quarterback 4, quarterback 5, and Levis is kind of opening the door for quarterback 3 a little bit. And it may not, we've got 4 months of scouting left, so we can't say definitively who is our quarterback 3 right now, but
no, it's very fluid at this point. I mean, we're not even, I don't have anything written. I guarantee you don't have any quarterbacks written down. It's just in your
head. No, I don't have rankings. No,
yeah. It's very clear that Stroud and Young are the top 2 guys at this point. Until it's going forward, until further notice.
Yeah.
One guy, and then one guy that could jump up, could overtake those 2 guys. I don't think it's going to happen, or he'd kind of already be going down that road, and we'd already know. But it was possible before the year is Spencer Rattler.
Yeah.
So he's kind of in that middle of the pack right now. No book going to be written on him until we get this full season under the belt.
I mean, you've got JT Daniels at West Virginia, you got Keaton Slavis. And you've got AOC at Purdue. I mean, he's in the conversation for that 5-6, possibly quarterback 5-6. And it's too wide open right now. There's too many talented guys.
Phil Dracovic and Bo Nix, and they're all over the place. Jaden Daniels, they're Anthony Richardson can come out. I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous. And then one last schematic thing you wanted to get into before we wrap up the national show here.
Well, I mentioned it to you while we were watching the Michigan game together, but I just wanted to reiterate it. Everyone's used 3-by-1 for a long time. For those that don't know, 3-by-1 is 3 receivers on one side of the formation, and then 1 receiver soloed up on the other side of the formation. But it seems like it's been a trend of 3-by-1 that we've been seeing all across college football, and maybe it's not something that's too out of the ordinary just because it's early in the year, and the best way to create easy reads for the quarterback is to give him a 3-by-1 look and it helps him diagnose the defense because the defense kind of has to force their hand on showing the coverage,
Yeah.
especially when you motion to the 3-by-1, which I'm seeing a lot of. Teams will start in 2-by-2, or they'll have the running back in the backfield and then they'll motion him out, and it'll end up being a 3-by-2 schematically.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, a big chunk of the base of the air raid is, a 2-by-2 of some semblance, whether it's 10 personnel or 11 personnel.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what we've seen in the last couple years here. And
I love the versatility because you're getting the 3-by-1. Some teams are stacking that, or they have one receiver behind the other. And then there's teams that'll run the 3-by-1 with the bunch look, which I think is a very effective way, especially if you want to run mesh. That bunch look can give you a lot of different opportunities. It's just something that I don't know if it'll continue all year because there's only so many times that you can run Y stick and Y cross before defenses kind of touch in on it.
not according to some OCs, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to find different formations to run it from.
Yeah, you got to have the different looks. But like you were saying with the 3-by-1, it forces the defense to declare a lot more than a 2-by-2 balance set. And from my perspective, I've never called an offense on the field. I know that you have. It seems like that's something you would want, especially with a young quarterback. But again, I'm not as schooled in the air raid concepts and such. So.
Yeah, and I mean, another thing that's kind of making a comeback this year is I don't know if everybody was watching the postseason last year, but receiver double passes are making their way across the nation. It seems like more and more teams have been running that so far.
Flea flicker too, man.
Yeah,
flea flicker too. It's like scripted now. Like everybody's got one or two. I mean, we saw Michigan have a shitload of success with that last year. They had a gadget play or two every game, and at the end of the year, it was going for big chunk touchdowns. I mean, if you can build them into your base offense and run it out of something that the defense is already seeing a lot, then, I mean, that can be a huge part of your offense.
Yeah, and another thing that's also helping offenses to start the year is seeing a lot more and more. It's always been a trend with some coaches. You've noticed more coaches do it more than others, but it seems like a lot more offensive coaches are using their running backs in the flats or splitting them out wide and trying to get easy completions that way. And which is very effective and very smart. And I'd be doing the same thing. I mean, I've seen Sark this year alone. I've seen him run the running back wheel concept like out of 5 different formations. It's been truly incredible the way he can scheme some of those things up. But I mean, I've seen tons of running back wheels all year. Michigan's run it a handful of times this season as well, although we haven't hit one just yet.
Michigan hasn't had the running backs involved in the pass game quite as much this year, even with Donovan. I mean, no, Donovan Edwards has been out for a couple of weeks, but they're not motioning in and out quite as much as they were last year, and even Hassan was doing last year. But we both know he's a capable pass catcher. But so all right.
Yeah, that's all I really have. That's all I really have for offensive. Is there anything defensively that you've kind of picked up on? I know you haven't really been able to watch like a full. When we watch film, most of the time we're only focusing on one player to scout a certain player for that given time frame of when we're watching that film. But have you noticed anything schematically defensively?
No, not any one thing in particular. Like you said, I haven't been watching for schematic purposes and been focusing in on one guy. And as far as a trend or anything goes, no, there's nothing I can really bring to the table right now. But I do both the things you brought up on offense, I do agree with. Like I said, that these trick plays, it seems like it's getting built into your script and it's part of the offense now. So, hey,